My sister stood up at my baby shower, champagne glass raised, and announced she was pregnant. But 3 years ago, her doctor told our entire family she could never have children after the accident. My husband's face went from congratulatory smile to ghostly white in seconds, and suddenly, everyone was staring at him instead of her. What did my husband know about my sister's impossible pregnancy that I didn't? I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. I'd spent 28 years building what I thought was an unshakable life. My name is Eleanor Williams. And if you'd asked me 6 months ago whether I believed in perfect marriages, I would have laughed and said, no, but I would have been lying. Because when I looked at my husband Daniel across our farmhouse kitchen in Millbrook, Vermont, with morning light catching the silver in his dark hair, I genuinely believed we'd cracked some secret code that other couples missed. We met during a thunderstorm at Cornell University's library. I was a graduate student in art history. He was finishing his residency in cardiology at the medical center. I'd forgotten my umbrella, he offered to share his, and by the time we reached my apartment, we were both soaked and laughing like idiots. That was 9 years ago. We married within 18 months, bought the farmhouse 3 years later, and transformed it from a dilapidated money pit into something you'd see in those countryside living magazines. Daniel worked at Millbrook General Hospital, specializing in congenital heart defects. He'd come home with stories that would wreck me emotionally, babies born with hearts that barely functioned, families making impossible decisions, tiny miracles that happened just often enough to keep him believing in his work. I taught art history at the local college and freelanced as a curator for small galleries throughout New England. Our lives had rhythm, predictability, safety. My younger sister, Vivian, was the opposite of everything I represented. Where I chose stability, she chased excitement. Where I built carefully, she burned through experiences like they had expiration dates. She dropped out of Boston University halfway through her sophomore year to find herself in Southeast Asia, came back 2 years later with a Thai script tattoo she couldn't actually read, then cycled through careers like most people cycled through Netflix shows. Yoga instructor, coffee shop owner, life coach, amateur photographer, nothing stuck. But I loved her. God, I loved her with that complicated, frustrated, fiercely protective love you can only have for a sibling who drives you insane, but who you'd still throw yourself in front of a bus for. 3 years ago, Vivian was living in Portland, Oregon, working at some organic juice bar and dating a musician named something pretentious like Sage or River. I honestly couldn't keep track. She'd come home for Christmas, and that's when it happened. She borrowed Mom's car to drive to a New Year's Eve party in Boston, hit black ice on Route 2, and rolled the vehicle 3 times. She survived with a fractured pelvis, internal bleeding, and damage to her reproductive organs that required emergency surgery. I remember sitting in that hospital waiting room at Massachusetts General, Daniel beside me still in his scrubs from his own shift in Vermont, Mom crying quietly into Dad's shoulder. When the surgeon finally came out, she looked exhausted. "Vivian's stable," she'd said, but there were complications. The damage to her uterus and fallopian tubes was extensive. We did everything we could, but realistically, natural pregnancy is going to be nearly impossible for her. Nearly impossible. Those were the exact words. Not completely impossible, but nearly. The distinction felt important at the time, like leaving a window open just a crack. But the fertility specialist they sent her to 3 months later was less diplomatic. "I'd put your chances at conceiving naturally somewhere around 1%. Maybe less." Vivian took it the way she took everything, with a shrug and some comment about how she'd never really wanted kids anyway. But I saw her face when she thought no one was looking. I saw the way she'd go quiet whenever someone announced a pregnancy. I saw her leave my baby shower, planning meetings early with transparent excuses about work or appointments or sudden headaches. Which is why, when Daniel and I found out I was pregnant last October, I agonized over how to tell her. We'd been trying for 18 months. Nothing aggressive, no fertility treatments or invasive procedures, just the normal trying that couples do when they decide they're ready. Month after month, disappointment. Then in October, that stupid plastic stick showed 2 pink lines, and I cried so hard Daniel thought something was wrong. I called Vivian last, after Mom and Dad, after Daniel's parents, after our closest friends. I drove to her apartment in Burlington. She'd moved back to Vermont 6 months earlier, taking a job at a bookstore cafe, and I told her in person. I watched her face carefully, searching for pain or resentment. Instead, she grabbed me in a hug so tight I could barely breathe. "Oh my God, Ellie, this is amazing," she'd said, and her voice was thick with emotion. "You're going to be such a good mom. This baby is so lucky." She threw herself into pregnancy aunt mode with characteristic Vivian intensity. She texted me articles about prenatal vitamins and organic baby products. She sent me photos of cute nursery decorations she found online. When I had morning sickness so bad I couldn't leave the bathroom for 3 hours, she showed up with ginger tea and saltines and sat on the floor beside me, rubbing my back. "I'm here for all of it," she promised. "Every weird craving, every swollen ankle, every moment you need someone who isn't Daniel." And she was. She came to doctor's appointments when Daniel had emergency surgeries. She helped paint the nursery, pale yellow with white clouds, gender neutral and peaceful. She organized my baby shower, insisting she wanted to do it, that it would make her happy to plan something special for me. The shower was scheduled for a Saturday in mid-April at our farmhouse. Vivian handled everything: invitations, catering, decorations, games. She created a spreadsheet more detailed than anything I'd ever seen her produce for her own life projects. She called me 3 times a day with questions about guest preferences and dietary restrictions and whether I wanted the gift table by the window or near the fireplace. "You're going overboard," I told her during one of these calls, amused by her intensity. "It's your first baby," she shot back. "My first niece or nephew. It should be perfect." Daniel thought it was sweet. "She's trying to be involved," he said one evening, his hand on my very pregnant belly. We were lying in bed, my back aching despite the pregnancy pillow fort I'd constructed. "It's probably her way of dealing with her own stuff." "I know," I said. "I just don't want her to feel like she has to prove anything." "Then tell her that." But I didn't, because part of me was relieved that she seemed okay, that my happiness wasn't causing her pain, that maybe we could move forward into this new phase of our lives without the shadow of her loss hanging over us. The morning of the shower, I woke to perfect April weather. 70 degrees, clear skies, the kind of day that made you remember why people tolerated Vermont winters. Daniel made me breakfast, scrambled eggs with cheese, wheat toast, fresh strawberries, and then disappeared to the hospital for a few hours to check on a post-op patient. "I'll be back before it starts," he promised, kissing my forehead. 2:00 sharp. Vivian arrived at noon with her car full of decorations and a smile that looked almost manic with excitement. And I remember thinking, as she carried boxes of pastel balloons and floral centerpieces into my house, that everything had worked out exactly the way it was supposed to. I had no idea that in 4 hours, my entire life would detonate. The living room looked like something out of a Pinterest board come to life. Vivian had strung white and gold paper lanterns from the exposed beams, arranged flowers in vintage mason jars on every surface, and created a dessert table that belonged in a professional bakery. Tiny cupcakes with yellow frosting sat beside a 3-tier cake decorated with fondant clouds. She'd even made a Wishes for Baby station where guests could write advice on cards shaped like stars. "Viv, this is incredible," I told her, genuinely overwhelmed. My hand instinctively went to my belly, 8 months along, and the baby was doing gymnastics routines that made me convinced we were having an Olympic athlete. She beamed at me, her auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing a flowing floral dress that made her look ethereal. "Only the best for my sister. Now sit down before your ankles explode. I've got this." Guests started arriving around 1:30. My college roommate Rachel came with her twin daughters, now 7 years old and immediately fascinated by my pregnant belly. Daniel's mother Patricia arrived with his Aunt Susan, both carrying elaborately wrapped gifts. My mom showed up with Dad in tow, already crying happy tears before even taking off her coat. "Mom, the party hasn't even started," I laughed, hugging her carefully around my stomach. I know," she sniffled, dabbing at her eyes. "I just can't believe my baby is having a baby." My best friend since childhood, Maya Torres, arrived fashionably late, as always, carrying a gift bag so large she had to turn sideways to get through the door. "Please tell me you registered for reasonable things and not just organic cotton onesies that cost $40, she said, kissing my cheek. "I registered for a mix," I assured her. "Practical stuff and a few ridiculously overpriced organic items to make me feel like a good future parent." Daniel arrived at exactly 2:00, still in his work clothes but carrying a bouquet of tulips, my favorite. He'd clearly rushed home from the hospital, his hair slightly disheveled, his tie loosened. He found me in the kitchen, surrounded by Vivian's carefully prepared appetizers, and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "How's our girl doing?" he murmured against my neck. "We don't know if it's a girl," I reminded him for the 1,000th time. We'd chosen not to find out the sex, wanting to be surprised. I have a feeling, he said, his hands splayed across my belly. Call it paternal intuition. Vivian appeared in the doorway, her smile bright. Daniel, perfect timing. Can you help me move the drink station outside? I think people will want to mingle on the porch with this weather. Of course, he said, releasing me. They disappeared together, and I heard their laughter floating back from the porch. Easy, familiar, the sound of two people who'd known each other for years and genuinely liked each other. That was one of the things I'd always loved about our family dynamic. Vivian and Daniel got along naturally, no forced politeness, no awkward silences. When she'd moved back to Vermont, they'd fallen into an easy friendship. Sometimes the three of us would meet for dinner in Burlington. Daniel would talk about his patients, carefully maintaining confidentiality but sharing the emotional weight of his work. And Vivian would counter with stories from the bookstore cafe, funny anecdotes about customers who came in and spent 6 hours nursing a single coffee while writing their novels. The shower officially started at 2:30. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. Vivian had planned games that were actually fun, instead of the usual cringe-worthy baby shower torture, a guess the baby food, taste test that had everyone gagging over pureed peas, a diaper raffle, where guests brought diaper packages for raffle tickets. The winner got a spa gift basket. She'd even organized a onesie decorating station with fabric markers and plain white baby clothes, and I watched my adult friends and family compete to create the most creative designs. Rachel's twins made onesies covered in rainbow hearts. Maya drew a surprisingly detailed cartoon dragon. Daniel's mother carefully wrote Grandma's Little Angel in perfect cursive. My dad, who claimed zero artistic ability, drew a surprisingly good sketch of a duck. I moved through the party in a happy daze, accepting hugs and well wishes, eating too many of those tiny cupcakes, feeling the baby kick whenever someone new placed their hand on my belly. These were my people, the village who would help raise this child, who would babysit at midnight when Daniel and I were losing our minds, who would show up with casseroles and unsolicited advice and endless love. Around 4 o'clock, Vivian announced it was time for gifts. She'd arranged the gift table like a throne, with me sitting in our oversized armchair, the same chair Daniel and I had bought at an estate sale 5 years ago and painstakingly reupholstered ourselves. Someone handed me a mimosa, virgin, obviously, and the unwrapping began. Baby clothes in every size and color, a high-tech bottle sterilizer from Patricia, books. So many books, because everyone knew I was the English literature graduate who'd read to this baby from day one. A handmade quilt from Daniel's Aunt Susan, each square embroidered with different nursery rhyme characters. Maya's giant gift bag contained a breast pump, practical, a wine bottle with a label that read, "Open when baby sleeps through the night," optimistic, and a onesie that said, "My aunt is cooler than your aunt," accurate. Rachel gave us a baby monitor system that looked like NASA technology. "Trust me," she said. "You want the one with the breathing sensor. Your anxiety will thank me." My parents gave us a carved wooden rocking chair that Dad had made himself in his workshop, and I actually cried looking at it, imagining all the late nights I'd spend in that chair, rocking a tiny human to sleep. Daniel stood beside my chair throughout the gift opening, his hand resting on my shoulder, occasionally leaning down to kiss the top of my head. He seemed relaxed, smiling genuinely at the gifts, making jokes with the guests. I remember catching his eye at one point and mouthing, "I love you," and watching him mouth it back. Vivian was everywhere at once, taking photos, refilling drinks, managing the gift wrapping paper disposal, making sure everyone had enough food. She'd transformed into the perfect hostess, anticipating needs before people even realized they had them. When Patricia mentioned she'd forgotten her reading glasses and couldn't see the card on her gift, Vivian materialized with a pair. When one of Rachel's twins spilled juice on her dress, Vivian appeared with club soda and a clean towel before anyone else even noticed. "Your sister is a miracle worker," Maya whispered to me during a brief moment when we were alone. "Seriously, can I hire her to plan my wedding if I ever stop being commitment phobic?" "She's been amazing," I agreed, watching Vivian across the room, laughing with Daniel's Aunt Susan. "I think this whole thing has been good for her, honestly, giving her something to focus on." Maya gave me a look I couldn't quite read. "You think she's really okay with all this?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, her situation, and now you having a baby. That's got to be complicated for her." "She says she's happy for me," I said, defensive without meaning to be. "She's been nothing but supportive?" I know, I'm not saying she isn't. I'm just saying it's okay to acknowledge that this might be hard for her, even if she's genuinely happy for you. Both things can be true. Before I could respond, Vivian called for everyone's attention. Okay, everyone, before we do cake, I thought we could go around and share our favorite pregnancy or baby memory or just something we're excited about for Eleanor and Daniel's new adventure. Groans mixed with laughter. No one particularly wanted to do sharing circle activities, but people complied because Vivian's enthusiasm was infectious. My mom went first, talking about the day I was born during a snowstorm so intense that the hospital was operating on backup generators. Rachel shared the story of her twins arriving 5 weeks early and how terrifying and miraculous it was. Daniel's mother got emotional talking about the day Daniel was born and how holding him for the first time made her understand a love she'd never known existed. Then it was Daniel's turn. He cleared his throat, looking slightly uncomfortable with the attention, but managing a smile. I'm not great at these sharing things, he started, and everyone laughed. But I will say that watching Eleanor through this pregnancy has been transformative. Seeing her handle every challenge with grace, seeing her body literally creating life, it's made me love her in ways I didn't know were possible. And I know she's going to be an extraordinary mother. I was crying again, hormones making me an absolute mess, and people were applauding, and Daniel leaned down to kiss me while everyone awed appreciatively. A few more people shared. Maya told a hilarious story about accidentally babysitting her cousin's toddler while hungover, which had her swearing off children forever until she saw him give her a crayon drawing of the two of them holding hands, which she still had framed in her apartment. Rachel's twins both announced they were excited to have a new baby to play with, though they were concerned the baby wouldn't know how to play video games yet. Then Vivian stood up. She'd been sitting on the arm of the couch, nursing a champagne glass. Actual champagne, not the virgin mimosa most of us were drinking. Her cheeks were flushed, whether from alcohol or emotion or excitement, I couldn't tell. I guess it's my turn, she said, and her voice had a strange quality to it, something I couldn't identify. Nervous? Excited? Both? You don't have to share if you don't want to, I told her. You've already done so much planning this whole thing. No, I want to, she insisted. I really, really want to. The room settled into attentive silence. Vivian had that effect. When she had something to say, people listened. It was part of her chaotic charm, the way she could command a room without trying. She took a sip of her champagne, and I noticed her hand was shaking slightly. So, as most of you know, I had that car accident 3 years ago, and the doctors told me I probably couldn't have kids, which, honestly, I'd convinced myself I didn't want anyway, so it seemed like a non-issue. The room had gone very quiet. This wasn't the tone of a typical baby shower sharing moment. This was heading somewhere else. But watching my sister go through this pregnancy, being part of this journey with her, it made me realize something. Vivian's eyes were bright, almost feverish. It made me realize that maybe I did want this, that maybe all my talk about not wanting kids was just protecting myself from wanting something I couldn't have. My mom reached over and squeezed my hand. Maya shifted uncomfortably beside me. Daniel had gone very still, his hand frozen on my shoulder. And then something incredible happened, Vivian continued, her voice rising with emotion. Something the doctors said was basically impossible. My heart started beating faster. A strange prickling sensation crept up my spine. Vivian raised her champagne glass higher, and her smile was radiant, triumphant, almost manic. I'm pregnant. The words hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. For a moment, nobody moved, nobody spoke. The only sound was the wind chimes on the porch, tinkling gently in the breeze. Then the room erupted. My mother gasped. Patricia actually dropped her plate. I heard it shatter on the hardwood floor. Rachel's mouth fell open. Maya grabbed my arm so hard it hurt. Oh my God, Vivian! Someone squealed. I think it was Daniel's Aunt Susan. That's amazing! That's a miracle! People started talking over each other, asking questions, moving toward Vivian to hug her. The energy in the room had shifted completely, transforming from my baby shower into something else entirely. Vivian's pregnancy announcement. But I wasn't looking at Vivian. I was looking at Daniel, and Daniel's face had gone completely, utterly white. Not the healthy color draining of surprise, not the pale of someone who's shocked but happy. This was different. This was the bloodless, corpse-like white of someone who'd just been punched in the gut. His mouth was slightly open, his eyes were wide, fixed on Vivian with an expression I'd never seen before. Fear, that's what it was. Daniel looked absolutely terrified. His hand fell from my shoulder. He took a step backward, almost stumbling. Someone was asking Vivian how far along she was, and she was laughing and saying, "About 3 months," and everyone was celebrating, but all I could do was stare at my husband's face. "Daniel?" I said, and my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Distant, like I was underwater. He didn't respond. He was still staring at Vivian, and she was staring back at him, and something passed between them, something silent and terrible. Maya's grip on my arm tightened. "Eleanor," she whispered. "Eleanor, what's wrong with Daniel?" I didn't answer, couldn't answer, because I was watching my husband's face drain of color at my sister's pregnancy announcement, and the only possible explanations for that reaction were circling my brain like vultures. The doctors said it was nearly impossible for Vivian to get pregnant naturally. Nearly impossible, not completely impossible. But Daniel's reaction suggested he knew something the rest of us didn't. Daniel's reaction suggested this wasn't a miracle at all. Time moved strangely after that. The party continued around me, people hugging Vivian, asking excited questions about due dates and baby names and whether she'd found out the sex yet. But I felt disconnected from it all, like I was watching through thick glass. My entire focus had narrowed to Daniel, who had backed himself against the wall near the fireplace, his face still that awful bloodless color. "I need air," he said abruptly, to no one in particular, and then he was moving toward the front door with jerky, mechanical steps. I tried to stand, but at 8 months pregnant, nothing happened quickly. By the time I'd leveraged myself out of the armchair, Daniel was already outside. Maya grabbed my elbow, steadying me. "What the hell was that?" she hissed in my ear. Why did Daniel look like he'd seen a ghost? "I don't know," I said, but my voice shook on the words. Because I did know, or at least my subconscious knew, and it was screaming warnings that my conscious mind desperately didn't want to hear. "Eleanor, sweetie, are you okay?" My mom appeared at my other side, her face creased with concern. "You look pale. Should you sit down? Is it the baby?" "I'm fine," I lied. "Just overwhelmed. I think I need a minute." I made my way through the crowd. People were still swarming Vivian, who looked radiant, almost glowing with triumph, and out the front door. The April sunshine felt too bright, almost offensive. How could the weather be perfect when my world was tilting sideways? Daniel was standing at the far edge of the porch, gripping the railing so hard his knuckles were white. His back was to me, his shoulders rigid. For a moment, I just watched him, this man I'd shared a bed with for 9 years, whose breathing patterns I knew by heart, whose body I could navigate in complete darkness. He suddenly looked like a stranger. "Daniel." He didn't turn around. "I just needed some air. I'll be back inside in a minute." "Why did you look like that?" "Like what?" "You know, like what?" I moved closer, one hand on my belly, the other reaching for the railing to steady myself. "When Vivian announced her pregnancy, you went white. You looked terrified." "I was just surprised," he said, but his voice was too tight, too controlled. "The doctors said it was nearly impossible. It shocked me." "It shocked everyone," I said. But nobody else looked like they'd been punched. Nobody else looked like they were going to pass out. He finally turned to face me, and I searched his features for something: guilt, fear, innocence, anything that would help me understand. But he'd pulled on what I privately called his doctor mask, the professional, carefully neutral expression he used when delivering bad news to patients' families. "Eleanor, this is your baby shower. We should get back inside." "I don't give a damn about the shower right now. I'm asking you what's wrong." "Nothing is wrong." "Don't lie to me." My voice cracked. "Daniel, please, you're scaring me." For just a second, something flickered across his face. Anguish, maybe, or remorse. But then the mask slammed back down. "I'm not lying. I was surprised by Vivian's news, that's all. It seemed medically unlikely given her condition, and my brain got stuck on that. You know how I get about medical anomalies." It was plausible. God, it was plausible enough that I wanted to believe it. Daniel did get fixated on medical puzzles, would spend hours researching rare conditions or unusual presentations. But this felt different. This felt personal. "Swear to me," I said. "Swear to me that's all it was." He held my gaze for a long moment, and I saw him make a choice. "I swear." I wanted to push harder, wanted to demand real answers, but the baby chose that moment to kick hard enough to make me wince. Daniel's eyes dropped to my belly and something in his face softened. Are you okay? Is the baby? We're fine, I said. Just active. He reached out hesitantly, and I let him place his hand where the baby was moving. We stood like that for a moment, his palm warm against my stomach, and I desperately wanted to believe that everything was fine, that I was just hormonal and paranoid, that my husband's reaction was exactly what he said it was, but I didn't believe it. Not really. We went back inside, and I pasted on a smile that felt like it might crack my face. The party had fully pivoted to celebrating Vivian now. Someone had brought out champagne. Actual champagne, not the cheap stuff, and people were toasting her miracle pregnancy. My baby shower had become her pregnancy announcement party, and normally that would have bothered me, but I was too busy watching Daniel. He'd retreated to the kitchen, supposedly to help clean up, but really to avoid everyone. I saw him dump an entire bottle of wine down the sink that someone had opened but barely touched. His hands were shaking. Vivian found me near the dessert table. Up close, she looked almost feverish with excitement. Her pupils dilated, her cheeks flushed. Can you believe it, Ellie? Can you believe this is actually happening? It's incredible, I managed. When did you find out? Just a few days ago. I'd been feeling weird, nauseous, tired, emotional, and I took a test on a whim. 5 positive tests later, I went to see Dr. Henderson at Millbrook General. She confirmed it. 12 weeks along. 12 weeks. 3 months. I did the mental math automatically, counting backward. That would put conception around mid-January, after Christmas, after New Year's. I tried to remember what Vivian had been doing in January, whether she'd mentioned dating anyone. Who's the father? The question came out sharper than I intended. Vivian's smile faltered slightly. Does it matter? Of course it matters. You're pregnant. Presumably there's another parent involved. I don't really want to talk about him, she said, looking away. It's complicated. Complicated how? Just complicated, Eleanor. Can't you just be happy for me? I am happy for you, I said, but even to my own ears, it sounded hollow. I'm just surprised you haven't mentioned anyone you were seeing. Not everything in my life is your business, she snapped, and there was an edge to her voice I'd never heard before. Then she seemed to catch herself, softening. I'm sorry, hormones, This has been overwhelming, and I wasn't planning to tell anyone yet, but then I was at your shower and everyone was so happy and it just came out. At my shower, she'd announced her miracle pregnancy at my baby shower, stealing my moment, and I wasn't supposed to be bothered by it because it was a miracle. I felt petty for even thinking it, but I couldn't help it. Maya appeared beside me as Vivian walked away. That was weird, right? Not just me. Which part? The part where she announced her pregnancy at your baby shower. The part where Daniel looked like death. The part where she won't say who the father is. Maya ticked them off on her fingers. Pick one. They're all weird. She says it's complicated. Complicated usually means married, Maya said flatly. Or otherwise unavailable. The thought hit me like ice water. Married. Unavailable. I looked across the room at Daniel, who was now talking to his mother, but kept glancing toward the door like he wanted to escape. Then I looked at Vivian, who was laughing with Rachel, but kept glancing at Daniel. No, that was insane. That was impossible. Daniel loved me. Vivian was my sister. They couldn't. But the doctors said Vivian's pregnancy was nearly impossible too. The party finally wound down around 6:30. People started leaving, collecting their purses and sweaters, thanking me for including them, congratulating Vivian again on her miracle. Patricia hugged me tightly before she left. That was quite an announcement, she said quietly. How are you feeling about it? I'm happy for her, I said automatically. Patricia studied my face for a moment, and I saw something in her expression that made my stomach clench. Concern, worry, like she'd noticed something too, but didn't want to say it out loud. Well, if you need anything, sweetheart, you call me. Anytime. After everyone left, Daniel immediately went upstairs, claiming he had paperwork to review for a patient he was seeing Monday morning. Vivian stayed to help clean up, moving through my house collecting champagne glasses and wadded napkins, humming to herself. You really don't have to do this, I told her. You've done enough. I want to help, she insisted. Besides, we barely got to talk during the party. Everyone kept pulling me away to ask questions. Because you announced your pregnancy at my baby shower, I thought but didn't say. Vivian, I need to ask you something. She paused, a stack of dirty plates in her hands. Okay? The father of your baby. Is he someone I know? Her face went carefully blank. Why would you ask that? Because you won't talk about him. Because you called him complicated. Because I hesitated, then plunged forward. Because Daniel had a really strange reaction to your announcement. Daniel was probably just shocked, like everyone else. It was more than shock, Viv. She set the plates down on the counter with a sharp click. What are you implying, Eleanor? I'm not implying anything. I'm asking directly. Is there something going on between you and Daniel? The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Vivian stared at me, and I stared back, and I realized I was holding my breath, waiting for her to laugh and tell me I was being ridiculous, waiting for her to deny it absolutely. Instead, she said, You're being paranoid. Pregnancy hormones are making you crazy. That's not a denial. I shouldn't have to deny something so absurd. Her voice rose. You think I'd sleep with your husband? You think Daniel would cheat on you, especially while you're pregnant with his child? What kind of people do you think we are? Then tell me who the father is. It's none of your goddamn business. She was yelling now, her face flushed with anger. Not everything is about you, Eleanor. This is my pregnancy, my life, my choice to keep the father's identity private if I want to. You announced it at my baby shower. You made it about me. Because I was excited, because for once in my pathetic life, something good happened to me, something the doctors said couldn't happen, and I wanted to share it with the people I love. Tears were streaming down her face now. But of course, you can't just be happy for me. You have to make it into some conspiracy theory where I'm a homewrecker and Daniel's a cheater. You can't stand that I'm finally getting something you have. Her words hit like slaps. Vivian, no, you know what? I'm done. I'm going home. She grabbed her purse from the counter and headed for the door. Thanks for the support, sis. Really means a lot. The door slammed behind her, rattling the windows. I stood in my kitchen, surrounded by the debris of my baby shower, feeling like the floor had dropped out from under me. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his face tight. What was that about? I asked her who the father was. Eleanor. She wouldn't tell me. She got defensive and angry and left. Of course she got defensive. You basically accused her of sleeping with me. Did I? I turned to face him fully. Because I don't remember saying your name. But you knew exactly what I was implying. How did you know that, Daniel? He opened his mouth, closed it again. Because I heard you yelling. We weren't yelling about you specifically, not until after you came downstairs. I moved closer to him, watching his face. You knew what I was implying because you're guilty, aren't you? This is insane. Then prove it. Show me your phone. What? Your phone. Show me your text messages with Vivian. Show me there's nothing inappropriate. He actually took a step backward. I'm not showing you my phone like some teenager caught sneaking out. This is based on nothing. A weird look, a fight with your sister, your hormones making you paranoid. Stop blaming this on hormones. I was shouting now too, and I didn't care. Stop gaslighting me into thinking I'm crazy when my gut is screaming that something is wrong. Your gut is wrong. Then show me your phone. We stared at each other across the kitchen, both breathing hard, and I saw the moment he made his decision. No, I'm not doing this. I'm not playing along with your paranoid delusions. I'm going to bed. He turned and walked back upstairs, and I let him go because I was too tired and too pregnant and too emotionally destroyed to chase him. I sank into one of the kitchen chairs and put my head in my hands. My phone buzzed, a text from Maya. You okay? That ending was intense. Call me if you need to talk. I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled up my recent calls and scrolled back through the past few months. Daniel and I shared a phone plan. I could see his call log if I logged into our account. I'd never done it before because I'd never had reason to. We trusted each other. Or at least I thought we did. My hands shook as I entered our account information. The call log loaded. I scrolled through Daniel's recent calls, looking for Vivian's number. And there it was, over and over again. Calls to Vivian going back months. Short calls, long calls, calls at odd hours. A 15-minute call at 11 p.m. in February. A 23-minute call at 6 a.m. in March. A 40-minute call just 3 days ago. My vision blurred with tears. I kept scrolling, kept finding more calls, and each one felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Then I saw it. A call from Daniel to Vivian on January 14th. 2 hours long. I did the math again. 12 weeks pregnant would put Vivian's conception right around mid-January, January 14th. The night I'd gone to bed early with a migraine. The night Daniel said he was going for a drive because he couldn't sleep. The night he'd come home at 2 a.m. smelling like cold air and something else. Something I'd convinced myself was nothing. My husband had gotten my sister pregnant, and somehow I had to prove it. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? I lay in bed next to Daniel. He'd taken his usual side without a word, turning his back to me, and stared at the ceiling while my mind spun in circles. The baby kicked and rolled, oblivious to the implosion happening around her. Him, them, I still didn't know. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep entirely and went downstairs. I made chamomile tea I didn't drink and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, staring at that call log like it might rearrange itself into something innocent if I looked long enough. But the numbers didn't lie. Daniel and Vivian had been talking constantly for months. Long calls, frequent calls at times when they should have been sleeping or working or doing literally anything except talking to each other for 45 minutes straight. I thought about confronting him with the evidence, marching upstairs and shoving the laptop in his face. But what would that accomplish? He'd already refused to show me his phone. He'd already called me paranoid. Presenting him with call logs would just lead to more denials, more gaslighting, more carefully constructed explanations that would make me doubt my own sanity. No, I needed something concrete, something undeniable. The sun rose slowly, painting the kitchen in shades of pink and gold that felt obscene given the circumstances. I heard Daniel moving around upstairs, shower running, drawers opening and closing. He came downstairs around 7, already dressed in his weekend casual clothes, jeans and the button-down shirt I'd bought him last Christmas. He stopped when he saw me at the table. "You're up early?" "Couldn't sleep." He poured himself coffee, keeping his back to me. "Eleanor, about last night. I want a paternity test." The coffee mug stopped halfway to his mouth. "What?" "When Vivian's baby is born, I want a paternity test, DNA test, whatever it's called." He set the mug down carefully on the counter. You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. You want to test if I'm the father of your sister's baby." His voice was flat, emotionless. "Based on what, exactly? A weird look at a party and some call logs?" So he knew I'd checked the call logs. Interesting. "You've been talking to her constantly for months. 2-hour phone calls at midnight. You won't show me your phone. She won't say who the father is. She's 12 weeks pregnant, which puts conception right around the time you went for that mysterious 2 a.m. drive." "I already told you that call. I don't care what you told me," I interrupted. "I want the test." We stared at each other across the kitchen. Outside, I heard birds singing, oblivious and cheerful. Finally, Daniel said, "Fine." My heart lurched. "Fine? Yes, fine. Get your paternity test. Prove to yourself that you're wrong and I'm not some monster who'd sleep with your sister while you're pregnant with my child." His voice was bitter. "And then maybe we can work on why you trust me so little that you'd believe I'm capable of that." He grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. "I'm going to the hospital. I have rounds." "It's Sunday." "I have patients who don't care what day it is." The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow felt worse than if he'd slammed it. I sat in the empty kitchen, my hands wrapped around my cold tea, and tried to figure out if his agreement to the paternity test meant he was innocent or just confident he could keep lying until I broke. My phone rang. Vivian's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "What?" "I'm sorry." Her voice was small, nothing like the angry woman who'd stormed out last night. "I'm sorry I yelled at you. I'm sorry I made your shower about me. You were right to be upset." "Vivian, can I come over, please? I need to talk to you, face to face." Every instinct screamed at me to say no, but I needed answers more than I needed to protect myself. "Fine, come over." She arrived 20 minutes later, looking like she hadn't slept either. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her hair unwashed and pulled into a messy ponytail. She stood on my porch, hands twisted together nervously. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked into the living room, still decorated with remnants of yesterday's shower, balloon strings hanging limply from the beams, and sat on the edge of the couch like she might need to run at any moment. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and you're going to hate me for it." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Okay, the father of my baby. She took a shaky breath. It's not Daniel. The relief that flooded through me was so intense I felt dizzy. It's not? No, God, no. Eleanor, I would never. Her voice broke. How could you think I'd do that to you? Then why did Daniel react like that? Why won't you tell me who it is? Why have you two been talking constantly for months? Vivian's face crumpled. Because the father is Thomas Reeves. The name meant nothing to me. Who? Daniel's colleague, another cardiologist at Millbrook General. He's married. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. He has 3 kids. We met at the hospital Christmas party in December. He was charming and funny and paid attention to me, and I was lonely and stupid, and I let myself believe he actually cared. My mind reeled, trying to process this information. You've been having an affair with a married doctor? It wasn't an affair. We hooked up a few times. January, mostly. He kept saying he was going to leave his wife, that things were complicated. All the classic lines I should have known were bullshit. She laughed bitterly. When I found out I was pregnant, I told him. He said it couldn't be his, that I must be mistaken, that I should take care of it quietly. Then he blocked my number. Jesus, Vivian. I panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I called Daniel. She looked up at me, her face streaked with tears. I knew he worked with Thomas. I thought maybe he could talk to him, convince him to at least acknowledge the baby. And Daniel, he tried. He really tried. That's why they've been talking so much. Daniel's been trying to convince Thomas to step up, to at least provide financial support. But Thomas keeps denying it's his. The pieces started clicking into place. The phone calls, Daniel's strange behavior, his reluctance to show me his phone, not because he was hiding an affair, but because he was hiding Vivian's secret. Why didn't you just tell me? Because I'm ashamed, she sobbed. Because you have this perfect life with your perfect husband and your perfect baby on the way, and I'm the screw-up little sister who got pregnant by a married man who won't even acknowledge his own child. I didn't want you to know what a disaster I am. I moved to sit beside her on the couch, my pregnant belly making the movement awkward. Viv, you're not a disaster. Yes, I am. I always have been. You're the successful one, the one who makes good choices, and I'm the one who drops out of college and cycles through careers and sleeps with married men. She wiped at her eyes angrily. And yesterday, at your shower, I was just so tired of being the pitied one. Everyone always feels sorry for me. Poor Vivian who can't have kids. Poor Vivian who can't keep a job. Poor Vivian who's a mess. For once, I wanted to be celebrated. I wanted people to be happy for me instead of worried about me. So I announced it, even though I wasn't planning to, and I stole your moment, and I'm sorry. I pulled her into a hug as best I could, with 8 months of pregnancy between us. She sobbed into my shoulder, and I held her, my own tears finally coming. Why did Daniel look so scared when you announced it? She pulled back, sniffling. Because he knew. I told him I was planning to announce at some family dinner next month after I'd figured out what to do about Thomas. But when I stood up yesterday, I caught his eye, and he realized what I was about to do. He knew it would raise questions about the father, questions that would eventually lead to Thomas, and he's been trying to handle it quietly at the hospital. There are ethical implications. Thomas is technically in a supervisory position over some staff members. There could be professional consequences if it comes out he's been having affairs. Daniel's been trying to protect everyone, including me, and I just blurted it out in front of 40 people. He should have told me. I asked him not to. She grabbed my hands. I begged him, Eleanor. I made him promise. It's my secret, my shame. I didn't want you to know. And he was honoring that, even when it made him look guilty. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, I heard a car drive past, someone's dog barking, normal Sunday morning sounds. My entire world had been imploding, and the rest of the universe had just kept spinning. I need to call Daniel, I said. I'll go. No, stay. I want you here for this. I called his cell. He answered on the first ring. Eleanor? Come home, please. Vivian's here. I don't think that's a good idea. She told me about Thomas Reeves. Silence. Then, I'll be there in 10 minutes. He made it in 7. When he walked through the door and saw both of us sitting on the couch, his face went through several emotions: relief, worry, exhaustion. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. How much did she tell you? Everything, I said. About Thomas, about the affair, about you trying to help. He sank into the armchair across from us, running his hands through his hair. I wanted to tell you so many times. Every time you asked me what was wrong, every time you looked at me with suspicion, I wanted to just explain everything. But I'd promised Vivian. You let me think you'd cheated on me. I know, and I'm sorry, but I didn't know you thought that until last night. I thought you were just upset about the shower situation, about Vivian stealing your moment. He looked at me with such genuine anguish that I felt my anger starting to crack. When you asked to see my phone, I panicked. It's full of texts with Vivian about Thomas, about strategy, about how to handle everything. I couldn't show you without betraying her confidence. You could have explained that. Could I? You were convinced I'd done something terrible. If I'd said, I can't show you my phone because I'm keeping your sister's secret, would you have believed me? Or would that have sounded like exactly the kind of excuse a guilty person would make? He had a point. In my paranoid, hormonal state, I probably wouldn't have believed any explanation that involved not showing me the phone. Vivian spoke up, her voice small. This is my fault. All of it. I created this mess. No, Daniel said firmly. Thomas Reeves created this mess. You're just dealing with the consequences of his selfishness. Are you going to report him? I asked. To the hospital? Daniel's jaw tightened. I've been debating that for weeks. On one hand, he deserves to face consequences for his behavior. On the other hand, making this public could hurt Vivian more than it hurts him. His wife, his kids, they'll all be dragged through it too. I don't want to ruin anyone else's life, Vivian said quietly. His kids don't deserve that. His kids also don't deserve a father who cheats on their mother and abandons his responsibilities, I pointed out. Neither does his wife. We sat with that uncomfortable truth for a moment. There were no good answers here, no clean solutions that wouldn't hurt innocent people. I think, Daniel said slowly, that I need to have one final conversation with Thomas. Make it clear that he has two choices. Either he privately acknowledges paternity, sets up child support, and handles this like an adult, or I go to the hospital administration with everything. Let him decide if he wants to step up quietly or have his life imploded publicly. You'd do that for me? Vivian asked, her voice wavering. Your family, Daniel said simply. And that baby deserves a father who takes responsibility, even if he can't be present in the traditional sense. I looked at my husband, really looked at him, and saw the man I'd fallen in love with. Not perfect, but fundamentally good. Someone who'd spent months trying to help my sister, protecting her secret even when it made him look guilty, working quietly behind the scenes to find a solution. I'm sorry, I said. I'm sorry I didn't trust you. You had reasons not to. I looked guilty as hell. He managed a tired smile. And pregnancy hormones are no joke. I see it with patients all the time. Pregnant women get these instincts, these gut feelings that are usually right. Yours were telling you something was wrong, and you were correct. Something was wrong. You just had the details mixed up. Still, I accused you of something terrible. And I let you believe it because I was keeping a promise. He stood and crossed to kneel in front of me, taking my hands. We both made mistakes. We both prioritized the wrong things. But we're here now, and we can fix this. I cupped his face in my hands. I love you. Even when I thought you'd betrayed me, I still loved you. That's what made it hurt so much. I love you too, both of you. He placed his hand on my belly and the baby kicked against his palm. All three of you, I guess, since we don't know what we're having yet. Vivian stood up. I should go, let you two talk. Stay for breakfast, I said. We should all talk. Figure out next steps together. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay, but I'm cooking. You look exhausted and you're growing a human. You should rest. While Vivian made pancakes in the kitchen, poorly because cooking had never been her strong suit, but the effort mattered more than the execution, Daniel and I sat together on the couch. He had his arm around me, my head on his shoulder, and for the first time in 24 hours, I felt like I could breathe properly. What happens now? I asked. Now I talk to Thomas one final time. Give him the ultimatum. Then we wait and see if he's smart enough to make the right choice. And if he's not, then we handle it, together, all of us. He kissed the top of my head, one crisis at a time. 3 weeks later, Thomas Reeves signed a private paternity acknowledgement and child support agreement. He wouldn't be involved in the baby's life. His choice, though Daniel made it clear that decision might change if his wife found out the truth another way. But he'd provide financial support. It wasn't ideal, but it was something. Vivian moved into our guest house in May, 6 weeks before her due date. Daniel and I both wanted her close, wanted to be able to help when the baby came. She protested at first, worried about being a burden, but eventually agreed. I gave birth to a daughter on June 3rd at 2:17 in the morning. 7 pounds, 9 ounces, healthy lungs that she demonstrated immediately. We named her Charlotte Grace Williams, and when Vivian met her for the first time, she cried and called her perfect. Vivian gave birth to a son 6 weeks later, August 15th, 4 in the afternoon. 6 pounds, 12 ounces, with his mother's auburn hair. She named him Oliver James, and he was the most beautiful disaster of a miracle I'd ever seen. Daniel and I took turns helping Vivian with overnight feedings. Our farmhouse became a chaotic symphony of infant cries, diaper changes, and the kind of exhausted laughter that only comes from sleep deprivation. We were a strange little family, a married couple, a single mother, and 2 babies who'd grow up more like siblings than cousins. Was it the life I'd imagined when I was planning my baby shower? No. Was it messier, more complicated, more difficult than I'd anticipated? Absolutely. But as I watched Daniel rock Oliver while Vivian fed Charlotte, all 4 of them bathed in evening sunlight in our living room, I realized something important. Perfect was overrated. This, messy, complicated, real, was so much better. And maybe that was the real miracle all along. The relief I felt after Vivian's confession lasted exactly 48 hours. Then reality set in, and with it came a new set of complications that made the initial crisis look almost simple by comparison. Daniel scheduled a meeting with Thomas Reeves for Monday evening after their shifts ended. He told me he was going to give Thomas the ultimatum, acknowledge paternity and provide support, or face professional and personal consequences. I kissed him goodbye that evening, watching him drive away with a knot of anxiety in my stomach that had nothing to do with pregnancy. He came home 3 hours later, and I knew immediately that it hadn't gone well. His jaw was clenched, his eyes dark with barely controlled rage. I'd seen Daniel angry before, frustrated with hospital bureaucracy, upset about losing patients. But this was different. This was personal. What happened? He threw his keys on the counter with enough force that they skidded across and clattered to the floor. He denied everything, said Vivian was lying, that she was probably sleeping with multiple men and trying to pin it on him because he has money. He actually had the audacity to suggest she was running some kind of scam. My hands curled into fists. That son of a... I told him we could do a paternity test. Prove it definitively. He said he'd refuse to submit to testing, that it was harassment, that he'd report me to the hospital ethics board for trying to extort him. Daniel paced the kitchen like a caged animal. Then he threatened me, said if I pushed this, if I made any official complaints, he'd make sure my career at Millbrook General was finished. He's been there longer than me, has relationships with the board members, donations to the hospital foundation. He basically made it clear he has the power to destroy me professionally. I sank into a chair, my hand automatically going to my belly, where Charlotte, we'd started calling the baby by name even though she wasn't born yet, was doing her evening acrobatics routine. So what do we do? I don't know. He stopped pacing and leaned against the counter, looking more defeated than I'd ever seen him. I want to fight him. I want to go to the administration, file a complaint, force him to take responsibility. But if I do that, I could lose my job. We have a baby coming in 6 weeks. We can't afford for me to be unemployed. We have savings. Not enough. Not for long-term unemployment in a small community where he has influence. Daniel's voice was bitter. And even if I did report him, what's the most likely outcome? He denies it, there's an investigation, maybe he gets a slap on the wrist if they even believe the accusation. Meanwhile, I'm labeled as a troublemaker, my reputation is damaged, and Vivian is publicly exposed as the woman who had an affair with a married colleague. Her privacy is destroyed, and there's no guarantee we'd actually win. The unfairness of it all made me want to scream. Thomas Reeves got to walk away clean while Vivian dealt with the consequences alone. He got to go home to his wife and kids, maintain his respectable image, keep his career intact, all while my sister struggled as a single mother with a baby she'd been told she could never have. There has to be something we can do, I said. But Daniel just shook his head, exhausted and defeated. Sometimes the bad guys win, Eleanor. Sometimes they have more power, more connections, more ability to hurt you than you have to hurt them. And you have to decide if the fight is worth the cost. I called Vivian the next day and told her what happened. She took it better than I expected, or maybe she'd already been preparing herself for Thomas to refuse responsibility. "I figured he'd deny it," she said, her voice flat. "Guys like him always do. They're very good at making women feel like they're crazy or lying when the truth becomes inconvenient. We could still fight him, get lawyers involved." "With what money, Ellie? I work at a bookstore cafe. I have about $3,000 in savings and a baby coming in 3 months. I can't afford a lawyer, and even if I could, what would I be fighting for? Joint custody with a man who doesn't want his child? Child support that would take years of legal battles to enforce? All while his wife and kids get dragged through the mud and I become known as the homewrecker who tried to destroy a family? You're not a homewrecker. He's the one who cheated. That's not how people will see it. Women always get the blame in these situations." She sighed, and I could hear the defeat in it. "I'm going to raise this baby alone. I've already accepted that. I hoped for a minute that maybe he'd surprise me, that maybe he'd be better than I thought. But people don't usually surprise you in good ways." After we hung up, I sat in the nursery we'd been preparing. Yellow walls, white furniture, a mobile of moons and stars hanging over the crib, and felt rage building in my chest. This wasn't right. Thomas Reeves didn't get to just walk away. He didn't get to threaten my husband, abandon my sister, and face zero consequences. There had to be another way. That's when I remembered something Maya had said years ago, back when she was dating a venture capitalist who turned out to be lying about being single. She'd discovered he had a fiancé in Boston, confronted him, and when he'd tried to deny everything, she'd simply said, "The truth always comes out. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it comes out. And when it does, you won't be able to control how." The idea formed slowly, carefully. Not revenge, exactly. Not even exposure, in the traditional sense. Just information. Making sure the right information reached the right people at the right time. I called Maya. "I need your help with something possibly questionable from an ethical standpoint." "Oh, this should be good. What are we doing?" "We're making sure Thomas Reeves's wife knows exactly who her husband is." Maya was quiet for a moment. "Are you sure? That's going to blow up their entire family." "Their family is already built on lies. I'm just making sure she has the information she needs to make informed decisions about her life." I took a breath. "He threatened Daniel's career. He called Vivian a liar and a scammer. He's abandoning his child. Someone needs to hold him accountable, and if the hospital won't do it, if the law won't do it, then maybe his wife deserves to know the truth." "Okay," Maya said. "I'm in. What do you need?" Finding Rebecca Reeves turned out to be remarkably easy. She had public social media accounts: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. She worked as a middle school teacher in Millbrook, posted photos of her 3 children at soccer games and dance recitals, shared inspirational quotes about education and family. Her profile picture showed her and Thomas at what looked like a charity gala, both dressed in formal wear, smiling at the camera like the perfect couple. I felt a pang of guilt looking at her photos. She seemed nice, normal, completely unaware that her husband was a serial cheater who'd gotten another woman pregnant and was now denying responsibility. But that guilt wasn't enough to stop me. Maya helped me draft a message. We went through 17 versions, trying to find the right balance between informative and compassionate, between exposing Thomas and not destroying Rebecca unnecessarily. The final version read, "Dear Mrs. Reeves, my name is Eleanor Williams. We've never met, but I'm writing to share information I believe you have a right to know about your husband's conduct. In January of this year, your husband had a relationship with my sister, Vivian Williams. She is currently 12 weeks pregnant with his child. When she informed him of the pregnancy, he denied paternity and blocked all contact with her. My husband, Dr. Daniel Williams, works with your husband at Millbrook General. He attempted to facilitate a private conversation between Thomas and my sister to arrange for child support without making the situation public. Thomas refused, denied the child was his, and threatened my husband's career if he pursued the matter further. I'm not writing this to cause you pain or to interfere in your marriage. I'm writing because I believe you deserve to know the truth about the man you're married to. My sister has medical records, timeline documentation, and is willing to undergo paternity testing to confirm Thomas's biological relationship to the child. What you choose to do with this information is entirely your decision. I simply felt you deserved to have all the facts. With sincere sympathy, Eleanor Williams." I included my phone number and email address. Then I sat staring at the message for 20 minutes, my finger hovering over the send button. "Are you sure about this?" Daniel asked when I told him what I'd written. We were lying in bed, his hand on my belly, feeling Charlotte kick. "No," I admitted. "But I'm more sure about this than I am about doing nothing. Once you send it, you can't take it back. There will be consequences." Thomas should have thought about consequences before he got my sister pregnant and then tried to destroy your career when you asked him to do the right thing. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Send it." I pressed send at 11:17 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Then I turned off my phone, curled into Daniel's arms, and tried not to think about the bomb I'd just detonated in someone else's life. Rebecca Reeves called me at 8:30 the next morning. I almost didn't answer. Unknown number, too early, and I was exhausted from another sleepless night. But something made me pick up. "Is this Eleanor Williams?" Her voice was controlled, carefully neutral. "Yes." "This is Rebecca Reeves. I received your message last night." My heart started pounding. "Mrs. Reeves, I'm so sorry to—" "Is it true?" she interrupted. "Is everything in that message true?" I took a breath. "Yes." Silence, long enough that I thought she might have hung up. Then, "This isn't the first time." "What?" "This isn't the first time Thomas has cheated. It's just the first time there's been a pregnancy." Her voice was still controlled, but I could hear something underneath it now. Exhaustion, resignation, rage held carefully in check. "There was a nurse 2 years ago, a pharmaceutical rep before that, probably others I don't know about. I stayed because of the kids, because I kept thinking he'd change, because leaving seemed harder than staying. I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be honest with me. What do you want? Money? Silence? Are you trying to extort my husband?" "No," I said firmly. "I don't want anything from you or from Thomas. My sister just wants him to acknowledge paternity and provide financial support for his child. That's it. No involvement, no joint custody, just basic responsibility." "And if he refuses?" "Then my sister will raise the baby alone. But you deserve to know the truth about who you're married to." Another long silence. Then Rebecca said something that surprised me. "Thank you." "For what?" "For telling me. For giving me the information I needed to make an informed decision about my life." She paused. "Can I meet your sister and you? I'd like to hear the story in person." We met that Saturday at a coffee shop in Burlington, neutral territory away from Millbrook's small-town gossip network. Rebecca Reeves looked exactly like her photos. Mid-40s, tired eyes, the kind of understated elegance that came from years of teaching middle schoolers and raising 3 kids while married to a doctor. Vivian was visibly nervous, her hands shaking as she stirred sugar into her decaf coffee. I sat beside her, my pregnant belly barely fitting between the table and the chair, ready to defend her if necessary. But Rebecca didn't attack. She just listened as Vivian told her story: the Christmas party, Thomas's attention, the promises he'd made, the pregnancy, his denial and abandonment. Rebecca's face remained carefully neutral throughout, but I saw her hands tighten around her coffee mug until her knuckles went white. When Vivian finished, Rebecca said, "I believe you." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "You do?" "Every word. Because I know my husband. I know how charming he can be, how convincing. I know how he makes women feel special until they become inconvenient." She set down her mug. "I'm filing for divorce. I've already contacted a lawyer. And as part of the settlement, I'm going to make sure he acknowledges paternity of your child and sets up appropriate child support." "You do that?" Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. "I have 3 children who deserve better than a father who abandons his responsibilities. And your baby deserves financial support from both biological parents, regardless of whether Thomas wants to be involved." Rebecca's expression hardened. "Plus, making him acknowledge the child as part of our divorce proceedings means I get to tell our divorce mediator exactly why our marriage ended. It becomes part of the public record. He won't be able to hide behind threats and denials anymore." I felt something loosening in my chest, not quite relief, because Rebecca's life was still being destroyed, but something close to justice. "I'm sorry this is happening to you and your children." "Don't be. You did me a favor." Rebecca managed a small, bitter smile. "Better to know the truth at 45 than waste another 20 years on a man who doesn't respect his marriage vows. My kids will be hurt, yes, but they'll recover, and they'll learn an important lesson about standing up for yourself when someone mistreats you. She left after that, but not before exchanging phone numbers with Vivian and promising to keep her updated on the divorce proceedings. Vivian and I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, both of us too stunned to move. "Did that really just happen?" Vivian finally asked. "I think it did." She believed me. She actually believed me. "Of course she did. You were telling the truth." Vivian started crying. Not sad crying, but the kind of crying that comes from relief, so intense it has to escape somehow. I held her hand across the table while she sobbed, and I thought about all the ways truth was messy and complicated and painful, but still somehow necessary. Thomas Reeves showed up at our house 3 days later. Daniel answered the door, and I heard raised voices from where I was folding baby clothes in the nursery. By the time I made it downstairs, slowly, because stairs and 8-month pregnancy didn't mix well, Thomas was standing in our living room, his face red with rage. "You destroyed my marriage!" he shouted at Daniel. "Let's see. My wife is filing for divorce because of you." "Your wife is filing for divorce because of you," Daniel said calmly, but I could see tension in his shoulders. "Because you cheated on her. Multiple times, apparently, because you got another woman pregnant and then tried to pretend it didn't happen." "Vivian seduced me. She knew I was married." "You're a grown man," I interjected, moving to stand beside Daniel. "You made choices. Now you get to live with the consequences." Thomas's eyes landed on my pregnant belly, and something ugly crossed his face. "This is all your fault. You and your crazy sister trying to trap me." "Get out of my house," Daniel said, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. "Now. You're going to regret this, both of you. I'll make sure—" "You'll make sure of what?" I interrupted. "You'll threaten Daniel's career again? Too late. Your wife is already making your behavior part of public divorce proceedings. You have no leverage anymore. You're just a cheater who got caught, and now you're throwing a tantrum because you actually have to face consequences for once in your life." Thomas stared at me, and I watched him realize he'd lost. That all his power, all his threats, all his attempts to control the narrative had failed. He was going to be the villain in this story, no matter what he did now. He left without another word. Daniel locked the door behind him and pulled me into his arms, careful of my belly. That was terrifying and impressive. I'm tired of men like him thinking they can do whatever they want without consequences. "Me too." He kissed the top of my head. "Remind me never to make you angry." 2 weeks later, Rebecca's lawyer contacted Vivian with a preliminary child support agreement. Thomas had agreed to everything: paternity acknowledgement, monthly support payments, medical expenses, rather than fight it publicly in divorce court. Rebecca had made it clear: cooperate quietly, or she'd make sure everyone knew exactly what kind of man he was. Vivian signed the papers with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. "It's done," she whispered. "He can't deny it anymore. My baby has a father on paper, even if he'll never be a father in person." "Your baby has a family," I corrected. "Maybe not the traditional kind, but a family who loves them already." And it was true. However messy and complicated and unconventional our situation was, we were family. All of us, Daniel and me, Vivian, the 2 babies who would grow up knowing they had people who chose to love them, regardless of biology or circumstance. Sometimes family isn't about blood or legal documents or traditional structures. Sometimes it's just about people who show up when everything falls apart and choose to stay anyway. That was enough. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.